2, and 1. There is a really good reason why when Ukraine invaded Russia, most sports leagues in football barred Russian owners and Russian players from further participation in the season. In fact, this is the exact same thing that happened quite recently in the European debate circuit when debaters from Israel were also temporarily banned on the basis of when Israel and Gaza was a really popular thing back then. The simple point that we posit to you on government is, as governing bodies in any sport, in any activity, when you stay silent under oppression, you are complicit in the proliferation of the abuse. What is the core clashes found in this debate, and why is opposition inherently unresponsive to what is the core things that are being debated on? 1. What is the specific role of the IOC and what should they do? I don't particularly think opposition necessarily understands this is a core part of the debate as to what was framed by Andy, of which we get very little engagement on. 2, where are we better able to help actually enfranchise all of these athletes and put them into a better position so that they can actually not get abused? Opposition, funnily enough, justifies a lot of poor treatment for people for a lot of various external reasons. As to what Joseph explains, that's not really how principles work. That's not really how the world operates. Opposition cannot win by just saying human rights abuses exist and that they'll fix it through working with these states when their side literally allows it to continue being accepted. 2 very quick callouts I would like to point out before the weighing of each clash. 1. OP has a noble intention, but it's misplaced in the round. The ones committing these violations are the very countries that they are trying to protect. On their side, you trap athletes in a system of no alternatives when they become at the mercy at their state to magically get their stuff together and be nice. Wait, didn't they POI Joseph saying that it's because of apartheid or because of other socio-political factors outside of their control that necessitates this happening? So, on their side, athletes probably get a lot more harmed and get a lot more mistreated. 2. LO's mech, which DLO bolsters, contradicts their own case. Because the alternatives of being able to be an import in another country's team, when you can change citizenship or, assuming feasibility, compete under an independent partner, only happen on our side. This doesn't happen, and you can't get the benefits from this on opposition because, as a necessity, they literally can't leave and compete for another country. Clash 1. On the role of the IOC and the burden that they have to fulfill. Andy was very clear in her setup. The core interest of the Olympic Committee is facilitating the Olympics not just for sport's sake, but for the celebration of human capacity and human cooperation. Why is this particular frame important in the round? 1, they have significant power in changing public discourse and making a better product and a better user experience for the people who watch the Olympics and for the people who participate in the Olympics. 2, they provide the biggest avenue towards pointing out the clear injustices that have existed in all of these very bad states, calling out sexism, calling out bias, calling out human rights abuses. What does LO and opposition say in response to this? The first thing they say is that it's untrue because it's uncharitable. That's not a response. They haven't taken out any of the concrete problems that Andy pointed out. Just to reiterate, becoming the likely characterization of these countries is that their path to becoming an athlete is marred and hindered by sexism, by insufficient funding, by unfair treatment by a state who gives less of a shit about them and has every incentive to not admit that they are treating them unfairly. So a lot of the mechanisms by DLO is literally unproven at the point in which you have to assume these states will say that they will abuse these athletes when which state will ever say that they do something bad? The second idea that opposition says is that they need representation. We agree, but on their paradigm, those athletes and their struggles are not the ones that are represented. What is represented is the regime of North Korea, of Afghanistan, of any evil state who abuses these particular athletes. Their representation is a false benefit at best. At worst, it gives all of these states even more legitimacy to still continue with these practices. Let's weigh out then why this clash is just outright one on government. The first is just on characterization. The IOC has every incentive and every capacity on our side of the house to do this, to stand with their interest and to limit the backlash that they particularly face. It's also very easy for them to just downright call out bad actors because they are bad. On their side of the house, you leave up the fate of these athletes to the same leaders who DLO says these athletes fear. They say they have mechanisms. What mechanisms did they give? It's far too late for OPWIP to give these mechs. It's just uncharitable. But secondly, on this particular clash, on short-term and long-term benefit, note that they have no mechanism to actually help get these athletes the help that they necessarily need. At best, they say they'll work with these countries. The proof for this is heavily underbuilt. E.g., why would these states even admit these abuses? Why would they actually agree to all the impacts that they want to happen? But even if it is true, it's still lacking in the interest of the IOC, particularly in the instance where they see countries not doing its best at protecting these particular athletes and not giving these athletes the care that they deserve. This is something that the IOC inherently does not want, and it's an easy no that they can say no to. The second clash, really quickly then, is just on the ability for athletes to expose the injustices that they face. Joseph's extension is quite important. Let me highlight the key impacts that he brought forth. Sports and optics and perception, number one, is the primary and great basis in order to call out all of the particular abuses that currently happen. That is to say, it's a very easy thing to have the media put attention on when otherwise, when they continue to compete in the Olympics, it's not gonna receive the same amount of leverage or the same amount of pull because precisely of the fact that it's quite a normal thing to happen, or that it's not such a normal thing that happens when these countries don't get recognized to begin with. That is to say, the key impact on our side, as to what Joseph points out, is that on our side, you get all of the benefits of creating or sustaining and actually figuring out all of the injustices and providing pathways for all of these athletes to leave and emigrate and to become a national for another country, as opposed to on their side, when they can still compete, they probably will, and they will continue to face all of the injustices that we have said. For all of those reasons, very clear gov ballot.